Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is awesome. A new podcast from Karen Hunter.
I haven't watched, since the I didn't watch the inauguration. I've been off of everything. And I started listening. I was listening to, and this is true, like gospel truth, to you, then to Urban View. But the reason I did is because I knew that it wasn't going to assault me, that it wasn't going to harm my central nervous system, and my mind and my spirit. And so I just want to say what it meant for me personally to get honest, unbiased information from you and from your from Urban View, from Clay, and from everyone. It is something I do not take lightly, and more so now than ever.
That's with intention. And I am biased. My bias is in humanity. I'm always going to consider people first. So that's my bias. But yeah, we were all intentional about, okay, we're in a particular time in history. We can bitch about it. We can complain. We can around the clock, Trump, or we can empower. This is how my grandparents got us rights to vote. It's like Absolutely. People got up and did something in the face of all manner of lynchings and burnings and, having their homes destroyed and crosses burned and all of the draggings and everything. They got up and still integrated neighborhoods where they knew they were going to be brutalized.
Yes.
Because they knew that they were doing something for not them, but for their children's children. And that's got to be the mantle that we wear now. And it's easy, though. So I want to say, while, yes, I receive what you're saying, I can't see any other way. And if it's not here, it'll be someplace else, because this is what I've been doing my whole life. And this is who I am. So, yes. And I wanted to ask you that very thing, because I watched a documentary today that I wasn't going to watch. And it was about P. Diddy, Puffy. It was The Fall of Puffy or something on Max. It's 5-part series. And I was like, I don't need to watch this. I lived through it. I don't need to watch it. I watched the other one that was on Hulu. That was good too. But I was like, as I'm leaning in, I'm pulling nuggets of things from this commentary from all of the people. And I landed on something that I wanted to discuss with you. So I'm glad I watched it, because I have a question. But how do you protect your peace, like you said, your central nervous system, with all of the noise that's out there? How do you determine what you can? Because I haven't watched any cable news. Yes. I didn't watch the inauguration. I'm not watching any of them talking heads. I avoid people who are doing the panels. Even when I was on one, I checked out. I was like, I don't want to be on this panel. I'm out. It's like, I'm out of here. But yeah, it's weird, because you don't want your head in the sand for, like, the lady that called up and said that the young lady didn't even know what DEI is. And I'm like,
yes.
How can you be that ignorant? Like, we have to lean into some things and lean out of others. How do you pick and choose?
Well, it's interesting, because my world is colored, and I mean that in terms of melanated people and, Latina and just lots of different kinds of people. And so I had to ask myself, when some of my closest friends were caught up and not raptured by God, but raptured by fear, was it fair? Was it okay for me to not have a clue about what they were talking about? And my answer quickly was yes. Not because I don't care about them, but because there won't be a me if I don't protect my peace. And so I decided that I was going to really come off of all of that assault until I was strong enough to lean back in. And so it was a choice between me and someone else, and I chose me. This is part of what we talk about here. What does it mean to choose yourself? Because if you don't, and you're focused and distracted about, who's in office now and what he's doing. And I heard something horrific about, actually on your show yesterday, about weight and the comment that was made, in terms of that overweight people don't need to, they don't need their subsidies because they need to lose weight anyway. And
Oh,
I'm
I
saying,
think that was Clay. We
was
didn't
that
talk about
Clay?
that. I think that
Okay.
was Clay. Yeah,
Well, that tells you I'm just going all the way through. So
dialed
I
in.
was in
I
the
appreciate
car.
it.
But I say that because how hateful is it for someone to talk about someone's weight and that it's good for those people to not be able to buy food because they're overweight anyway. And so I had to get my own mind together and my own central nervous system together so that I could come back into battle. I mean, 10 toes down, back erect, and unafraid. But I could not do that exhausted. I could not do that being bombarded the way as if I have no choice. I had a choice. I made the choice, and I'm here now, fully present.
I so received that, and I have not lost any sleep. Matter of fact, I sleep like a baby, not watching. I realized how much around the clock breaking news and how much anxiety it was like, what did he do now? What's next? So now I just gently comb through. I go read some articles and I pull stories, and I got, my team pull stories and listen to some clips, and then we put together a show, but it's with intention. So watching the Puffy thing was triggering as I was going through it, all of these people who were there, who saw him, and nobody really checked him. He was an unchecked demon. And I thought about, sure, they needed their jobs. Sure, they were covering him because they were journalists, and that's a different role altogether. So I'm not going to put the journalist in there. But the folk that were his handlers, the people that were his assistants, and the folk that were there day to day that I saw, but I didn't know, because you did know. What's our responsibility? Because I was saying, I feel like we're in a time where unchecked behavior lands people in the White House to affect all of our lives. Because somebody didn't check early. Here we are now with somebody that has wrecked so many lives. I'm talking about Puffy, but also somebody that has wrecked so many and will wreck more lives because they were unchecked.
Yeah, absolutely. And the danger, what you're really talking about is when someone says, I didn't know. Parents will say this too. I didn't know that my husband or my wife or somebody was touching someone inappropriately. Well, the thing is, it's your business to know. And a lot of times we know something. We know something was off. So I may not know from A to Z, but I know from A to J is mighty bad. And so the question is, what's going on in us, whether it's about voting, whether it's about, some long trauma in our families that, so-and-so continues to be invited to the holiday and no one talks about it. So there is a complicit guilt, if you will, in deciding to check out when other people are being harmed. And that's really what you're talking about with Puffy and what's happening in the United States right now and all around the world, that people just decide to not know what they know.
Mm. So I was also thinking, in every case, when the behavior came to them, then they stood like, you. Do we have to wait for the behavior? You see something that's wrong.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I did a show here on Urban View, as you said, Sundays, 11 a.m. in the East, from 11 to 12. And I did a show a couple of years ago talking about care before you have to. Because a lot of times people don't care until cancer is in their body or in their child's bodies, until a drunk driver, hits your house, your life, your child. So what you're talking about is, how do we care when it doesn't directly impact us. You talk about that every day, but you were talking about that yesterday. Like, there are things that aren't going to impact you directly, but you're not waiting for something because you realize that we're a collective community. And I don't mean just of melanated people. I mean, like you said, humanity. Like, I'm part of you and you're part of me. And so I've got skin in this game, even if my own job is not in jeopardy. I realize that, as Dr. King said, if we don't learn to live together as brothers and sisters, we're going to perish as fools. And many people somehow don't believe that they're going to be the fool. And we're watching it now. We're watching the manifestation of a level of of danger, actually. And I don't mean just politically. As you talk about Puffy, how could you be around that kind of evil? Because that's what we're talking about. I mean, wickedness. How could you be around wickedness and not feel, not see, not know that something very bad is going on in this hotel or house or car? The issue is you did know. And so what does it mean, Karen, for us to become accountable, to say, my bad? I didn't know how to say what I knew, or I didn't want to say what I knew.
Didn't we? No, you decided that your job and your livelihood was more important than that person's life, or more important than your own integrity, because that's really what's at stake, right? So,
Absolutely.
as I was watching, I was like, wow. But also, I'm going to play a clip from D.L. Hughley. D.L. Hughley had said something very horrible about Kamala Harris, and then he got better information, and then he apologized, and then he went on an apology tour, and he went out and helped try to get her elected. And now he's, when you know better, you do better. Is he a perfect person? None of us are. But this accountability piece, this self-correction,
Yeah,
and in the moment, we know when something is wrong,
sure we do.
especially when it deals with, sexual predation and all of the stuff that we're seeing. But to then not just stand up and apologize, but to check yourself and make it like, I'm zero tolerant. I feel like we need to be zero tolerant in a time such as this. We can't give any ground to the nonsense. And
Well, to check yourself before you wreck yourself. And what D.L. Hughley did also is, and I said this to you when you were saying you hold grudges. And I said, well, not to say you don't, but what I said to you is, what I imagine is, has anyone who's really hurt you and done you wrong, not just hurt you, but done something dirty and wrong, have they ever come back and said that they were wrong? Have they ever done the repair work? And you said, because I said, I'm not saying you just would be forgiving the world, but what I am saying is, it is unbearable when someone harms us and they never turn around to acknowledge what they've done. You can't, it could be a lawsuit if you admit that there's sexism or racism, or, you'll get in trouble. So, go to the confessional and tell the priest. Unless you abuse the priest, which I tell people, they're like, I went to confession. I said, well, okay, good. What did you confess? They say, well, what I did. I said, did you ask for courage so that you can go to your victim?
oof, child,
So you can
that's
go
the
to your
problem.
victim. Go to confession, go to the rabbi, go to the imam, whatever, but ask for the courage so that you can face the person you hurt. Otherwise, it's like, it's cheap. It's worth nothing. And so you're talking about, and I'm talking about, what does it look like for people to report for active duty in their own lives and hold themselves accountable? Check your own ego. If you don't know when you're tripping, then you have some work to do.
I'm also seeing a trend of people who have been, because hurt people, and I know you deal with this in your counseling sessions, right? People who have had trauma tend to, if it's unchecked, if the trauma isn't dealt with and healed, they tend to exact that same trauma on other people, and maybe to the 10th degree. So I'm looking at right now, whether we're talking about, the tech bros who felt bullied. Now it's like the empire strikes back. It's like, now I have the power to do to people, and I'm going to make them pay because I felt, maybe I was put in a locker, or maybe somebody gave me an atomic wedgie. All of that energy, though, is this is what we're in. Somebody who nobody wanted to date me, but now I'm the richest person in the world, and I get to make babies with a bunch of people. And it's like, yes. But where's your human? It's like you're still a child. Yeah. You're still behaving like a toddler. So I feel like in many ways, this is a larger conversation. It's not about D.L. Hughley and Snoop or Tabitha Brown or whatever. This is a larger conversation about accountability and where we are as humanity and what we're willing to do to stand up. I'm seeing nation leaders stand up in the face of tyranny, and they know that they're going to pay because it's a very petty, small person that is now our FOTUS. And, while Guatemala's like, okay, I can't take the 50% tariffs because it's going to hurt. You're going to hurt my country. And this is why my people are leaving anyway. Colombia. But, and they couldn't spell Colombia. But, we're in a place that's petty, and there's retribution for everything that's, people do. But there are nations that are standing 10 toes down. Ireland's like, whatever. Yes. I think the Danish are like preparing. Like, they don't have the army, but they're bolstering their army because you're not going to take Greenland. They still going to fight, and they know they can't win, but they're fighting anyway. So how do we fight when we know that the odds are against us? And I know that there's a scripture for this. I know that. I know.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. It's interesting because winning doesn't necessarily mean with a bully that you have to fight like they fight. You got to fight smarter. You have to know when to say what and when not to. And so a part of winning, if you will, a part of fighting is having an internal core that is unshakable. And that doesn't mean that you never have, any fear about your employment, or because people are being fired and people are being rounded up. But what is also true is that the more frightened you become, the weaker you become. And so that's why we need to protect ourselves and be in community with other people who remind us that we are not powerless. I mean, I talk about the danger of nursing and rehearsing, that what you nurse and rehearse, you manifest. You manifest what you nurse and you grow it. So there is research that talks about how we gravitate to negativity. And get this, that which is positive, we repel like Teflon, because our brains, our neural pathways are so wired for fear and negativity that it takes 10 or 20 times more practice around the positive, around the empowering, than it does the negative. So what does that mean? How do we win? Then I practice power. I practice positivity. And that means that I protect my mind and the energy around me from people who are petrified. And the bigger you make someone else, the more diminished you become. So don't elevate the bully.
Yes. Well,
This is what he, she, they are living for. Don't elevate the bully. Deflate the bully and inflate yourself. Not with arrogance, but with truth and with community and with love, and that we are here together and that you are not going to perish as a fool.
Introducing a new podcast. Karen Hunter is awesome.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're going to love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of The Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is Awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power. A 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. So check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Karen Hunter is Awesome, a new podcast from Karen Hunter.